We have Kamau Ngugi, who is the Executive Director at Defenders Coalition in studio with us. There's a whole topic, but I just want to know who defends defenders.
Yeah.
That's my agenda today.
And who's a defender?
Who is a defender?
To be defended by the defender of the defenders.
Right.
And all those. Kamau, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
It's good to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Ordinarily, Jano would be here to give you the day's quote,
Yes.
but she delegated that
Yes.
to Mariam.
Yes.
Very able. Mariam is here.
Niko gangari.
Ako chonjo.
Niko chonjo.
Yeah.
So I'll share the quote. You can see if it speaks to you or not.
Yeah.
Basically, it probably will, but maybe not. It's by Achille Mbembe, who was a Cameroonian historian. He said, "In many ways, Africa is a laboratory for the future of the world." In many ways, Africa is a laboratory for the future of the world.
Wow. Africa, the lab.
Yes.
No, Africa, dear mama. You know what we call Mother Earth?
Yes.
There is no other place to go but Africa. That's why we say Mama Africa.
Yes.
So honestly, that quote just describes one place. It's not a lab. It's the place to be. That's where the world begins.
Right.
That's where life begins. That's where everyone is going. That's where we have the youngest population in the world. That's where it has become that place where everyone wants to have their footprint to make the money and to actually drive globally. So we better start by actually driving ourselves when everyone competes for us in Africa.
I love that. Sometimes I would like the quotes that Jano shares. They're so nice. Sometimes I'm like, I would love to sit maybe in these rooms when these people are talking. Achille Mbembe is a lecturer, a professor in history and politics at the Wits Institute for Social and Economic Research at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. It's like, I hope wanakubali tu mtu aingie tu akae. Usikize tu guest lecture. Unajua tu. Usikize. But thank you for joining us.
A lot of Kenyans actually have gone through that university. Some of the best professionals that we have.
You're right.
One of these days, when I grow up, maybe I should go there and pass by there. When I pass by.
You just might come back
maybe.
here.
And then I have all the wisdom.
Yeah.
Come on, what is the Defenders Coalition?
Yeah. The name suggests Defenders Coalition. It's one of the unique institutions that we have actually globally, because a lot of times you and me talk about things that are affecting our country, affecting our lives, but no one talks about the people that feel agitated when things are going wrong. So Defenders Coalition is an organization that works closely with the people that you ordinarily call activists. People who do not sit back and say, oh my God, things are bad. And then you go to sleep and then again, another thing happens, you say, oh my God.
Things are bad.
You actually have to do something. But most of the time when you do something, you're stepping on the toes of people who are actually making our world bad. Those people who are clearing our forests, making our environment bad. These are the people who are stealing the taxes, and we say it is bad. But the human rights defenders, they say, no, look here, we have to fix this thing. Let's get a better country, let people thrive. And because of that, sometimes they get themselves in the hot soup, targeted for speaking truth to power. And then we say, why should you be a victim when you're doing the right thing? The Constitution empowers all of us to speak, so why should you be a victim? So the Defenders Coalition was set up in 2007 purely to focus on people who are at the forefront defending human rights, so that when they have insecurities or they are not safe, we step in.
I love that. Can I ask, who are the defenders that we don't often think of? Because I think mtu akisikia the way you've described it, maybe Boni ni defender, Boniface Mwangi, nani mwingine, labda Alan Zademba, labda. Who are the defenders in everyday life that we don't...
You're very right, Adeba, Boni, kudos to them. They're courageous. And a lot of Kenyans actually are very courageous. And start with your own community, start with your own mother. Most of the time, they fight so hard to ensure that you have food on your table. They fight so hard to ensure that you go through an education. But the challenge is that there are people who are making sure that our children don't get the education that they deserve. There are people who really are concerned that when you go to hospital, you will not get the medicine that you deserve just by speaking, and they get into trouble. In our own communities, that's where human rights defenders are. I know that not everywhere we have media to amplify the work that human rights defenders do.
Sure.
When I walk in every corner of this country, I meet people who don't even know that they are human rights defenders. So what they do is that it's the community that walk to them. So they know that if I go to Latif, for example, Latif will be courageous enough to help me deal with the issues that affect me. So ordinarily, they're not people that will come out there just to say what they do. It's the people who identify the change that they make that is so impactful within their own communities because of defending human rights. Something that every Kenyan should actually be a human rights defender, every human being.
Yes.
Because it's about what are these rights that you have? What is this that your country owes you? And what is this that you deserve? Right. And then if someone goes and takes away what you are owed as a human being, then someone has to say no. So that's the human rights defender.
I quite like that. Yeah. And then when you think of it like that, you realize everywhere there's a human rights defender somewhere. And that's a beautiful thing. It's also sometimes a scary thing, depending on the regime of the day, the politics of the day, the everything. True. Walk us through what the space has looked like for human rights defenders before independence all the way to 2026.
See, it's very interesting journey because Kenya is being looked upon by our neighbors because I think what we have done is to be successful in challenging oppression, in challenging what is wrong within our society. A lot of people basically have internalized and accepted fear, and therefore they don't speak up. And I say this knowing that as a country, we have a whole journey. Can you imagine someone comes into a country, owns it, occupies it, takes over the land, forces you to pay taxes, decides how much to pay you, changes your ecosystem, chooses what religion you should actually go for, and you're supposed to subscribe without questioning. And I think that is where the initial agitation against what we call land and other injustices and oppression. And that is why we are so proud of the people, our forefathers that fought for our independence. And then we remove the flag that used to call the Union Jack, and then we have now the Kenyan Constitution.
Was it the Union Jack that they used to raise?
That was the Union Jack, what I call the British flag. It was actually the one flying in this country.
Yes, it makes sense.
And they actually owned the country. Everyone was saying allegiance to the Queen. But come the 60s. But it took blood, it took sweat, it took death and tears for what we have. And unfortunately for us, the new generation, post-independence, we don't recognize the pain and the oppression and even trauma that people have gone through to have what we can call an independent country called Kenya. And therefore, if those people who fought so hard for us would wake up, they would just want to ask us only one thing: please, can you safeguard what we fought so hard for? And that's why we are all woken up to become human rights defenders. And then post-independence, we have the new government, what we call the black man government. And of course, everyone is excited. We have the Kenyan flag. We want to fight oppression. We want to fight poverty. We want to fight diseases. We want all those slogans that actually came in 1963. But the most important thing, people just wanted freedom to be, not to be given by the government, but to support the government to help consolidate the little gains that we have as a country to make everybody thrive. Unfortunately, we removed the flag, but we never removed the structures of oppression. So we have someone come on board. We are so inspired by the leadership of the second presidency and then what happens? We are so frustrated as a country, and all of a sudden, the same rules that guided our country before, that in terms of voting, you can't just decide who to vote as a leader. And when that leader is chosen, they live large, they can choose to take all the land that they choose. And the people who fought for it, they are let go to die, or just to, sometimes, some of them, the government facilitate their exit. So as a country, instead of thriving in a new regime, then we find ourselves actually being more oppressed. Again, the second agitation, and people start saying, look here, we need to choose the kind of leaders that will listen to us. That is post-independence.
Right.
And I'm talking about the governments of Jomo Kenyatta, I'm talking about Moi regime. But it's actually at that point in time, during Moi regime, when people decide, look here, where we are at, I think we need to change the format of governance. You can't be a dictator to decide who we are, what they used to call mama na baba. We need to enjoy our rights. Our education need to be fixed. Our land, we need to have tenure. And can we at least have the space to choose our leaders? Right. That's where they fight about Section 2A. And then we are again so proud to have the new multi-party democracy. Again, people are killed. People are still injured. People are still suffering trauma just because of that, detained without trial. And then we have that moment of truth. And we are so proud of the people who have fought for us. And then, all of a sudden, then we think we thrive, but the same structures are still holding us down.
Right.
They have systems like the police that refuse to reform. We have governance that, again, it is so against the same people that is supposed to fix. We have social services that are not being delivered. And then within the multi-party system, people introduces tribalism and everything that Gen Zs are refusing. Isms, whether it is the tribe, whether it is the class, whether it is who you know. I think that's the thing that we have to fix today. We are in a country in which you need to know somebody, you have the need to have the money, but you don't have a job to be able to fix your personal lives.
Yeah.
And I think this is why now we were empowered by the new constitution in 2010. Like the best thing that we have, everybody quotes it.
Yeah.
We quote the constitution, but we never quote how far we have implemented our constitution. And that is where we are at.
Yeah.
The thing is, you and me have a duty to ensure that the promises of our constitution, which first of all places the human, the people at the forefront, at the top of our leadership, that they're taken care of. But they have to choose who leads them. And they have to be involved in whatever we call development, the kind of service delivery, and the kind of tools that are used to govern them. And I think this is where we are at. It's basically a call for everybody to be a human rights defender, because the promises that are in that document is for you and me to make sure that it is realized. It is not the people that we donate our powers. They should not. It's a donation we give them.
I like that. You didn't even say delegate. It's
no,
donate.
we donate the power to them to guide us. Okay. Those are our human rights defenders. Yes. That's why every citizen is a human rights defender. But we are so proud for the few that stand out. And you know what? We are in that moment where we tell Kenyans, go Akadi, choose who you want to lead you, and actually be the one to lead us if you have the right vision, the right ideas. And please, the first thing, can you please ensure the person who is the lowest in the society, their rights are protected like everyone else.
Yeah. You know, then with that definition, there are very many rights defenders within our society.
True.
I mean, Kamau, you've worked in the grassroots, and you encounter somebody who is just standing up for, you know, fellow students in primary school or in secondary school. And we see what happens to authority pushing back on such. Just a small child in a class, you know, standing up and saying, no, I think this is wrong. And what happened? The entire system just closes in on them and discourages them going forward to ever rise up and say anything, right? Yeah. So how do we defend from that end? Yeah. Because, in fact, you'll hear very many stories of somebody saying, you know, this happened to me when I was, you know, in high school, and I did this, and I was suspended. I was expelled. But just the suspension itself, just the fact that they never became a prefect, because the headmaster or the headmistress decided, Nimekumak. That discourages them from ever coming out again. So is there any sort of protection that happens at that level?
Yeah. So look here, so you say human rights, it's about you. As long as you're human, there should be a mechanism to protect you. But it must start by you fighting for your own rights. Like you must to make demands. I'm a human being. And you correctly observe that we have created systems and structures of oppression that we have normalized. And I think that is the biggest undoing for our own societies, where you normalize oppression. I think what happens is that we're going to have a subservient society where you'll never have the self-expression and people to showcase what they got. And I have traveled, and I see how most countries, they actually invest in allowing students, young pupils, to express themselves publicly, and to speak up and question you and therefore they hold you to account when you're so young, from the very family to pupils in the class. And I think that's how you start killing these structures of oppression. I am a product of student activism. By the time I come to the national level activism, it's just fighting the challenges that, as a student leader in my own university back in the Moi University, we were uncomfortable that simple things, that books that should be in the library. Where have you taken those books? And here we are sharing one book. We have to make photocopy of the same book, or you copy each other's notes. But when you look at the expenditure sheet, it's showing that the books are in the library. You go in the same classroom, like you see the amount of money that is going to the staff level. You find that the investment is on ground, the ground staff and admin, very heavy, but the lecturers are earning so little. So you start questioning those things. And then we are told, like, no, that's outside. You guys, you're activists. And then I say, you know what? The best thing that happened to me is actually to be called an activist. It was supposed to be negative and a language to tweak you down. Today, an activist is someone who is proud, who says that, as I said before, I will not sit back and watch as things are going bad, because if you don't fix it now, the whole society will collapse. And the children, the generation that are looking up to us, they will feel extremely bad, and they will hold us to account. And that's why when I sit here, I say, why everybody keep asking, why are the Gen Z so agitated? Because you killed their lives, now you are killing their future. Why should they sit back and watch you kill their opportunities? You don't give them the jobs. There are no opportunities in education. Actually, only a few people who, at this point in time, only those who can afford, for those who graduate, there's nowhere to go. The question is, why should they not be angry that we are so proud talking to them, not allowing them to express themselves, and then when they speak up, you say, these kids, who brought them up, who brought these ones up? And the best you can do, instead of providing their forum, you're trying to kidnap and kill them. You can't do that. You can't do that. The future is now.
I love that. We have to take a really short break, but when we come back, I want to talk about taking advantage of the momentum that we have right now and making sure that it carries and becomes something that is coded in us, so that, when we speak of national values, national ethics, some of the things that we're pushing for right now, they become ingrained in society, such that even when someone who is corrupt or funny or ethically promiscuous, tries to run for any office, there's just zero chance. Like, we'll figure out how to code that, and also how into our DNA as a country, and then how exactly defenders defends defenders, what that looks like. We'll be right back after this. #IsFixingTheNation NTV. What's that?
Indeed, we shall be linking up with our crews who will be following the two big ODM meetings today. The Edwin Sifuna faction meeting at Fungamano, and the Buru Oginga faction meeting at the Jamhuri grounds. We'll have at some point Ibrahim Karanja and David Mudoka, who will be telling us what's happening on the ground. And as we wait for them, we continue our conversation in the studio here. We are talking about Defenders Coalition. Rights defenders, they need to be defended. How is that done? Kamau Ngugi is the executive director of the Defenders Coalition. He's our guest, and he's just walked us through, the need for there to be human rights activists in the country. Why do you need to all rise up and be externally vigilant on our rights? Right? We've been told this by many people. External vigilance is a citizen's responsibility and duty, right? To make sure that whatever they are doing, it doesn't erode the right of not just you, but the most vulnerable in the society. Just always looking at that. And then there are people who will chomoa their heads. Okay, Kamau, in the society, anatoa tu kichwa hivi na kiherehere ati yeye ni defender, anapata kibari. Now, those ones, they need, of course, support. They need to feel that they are being seen and they are being heard, that those whose rights they are defending and championing actually appreciate them.
Yeah.
Do we do that? Does society appreciate rights defenders?
Yeah. Good question. Does society recognize and appreciate human rights defenders? The thing is, they do. But it's how it's expressed most of the time and how we have been socialized. For the longest time, I mean, even saying you're a human rights defender or an activist actually was a dirty word. I mean, dirty in the sense that the people who are corrupt, the people who steal your money, the people who do not deliver on services, they create this narrative that you are wrong and you cannot question authority. So the moment they create the fear in you and you believe that what you're doing is wrong, that's the point where now they get all their power. But the moment you recognize that what you're studying for is right, your questioning is something that is actually given the power to you as a human being, but also by your constitution, and you can question, and then you reduce them. I'll give you an example what happened, like for me, my transition moment. We used to do some work in the Saburu area, and there is this conversation that people in the Saburu would not want to have about. They call bidding, where the young girls, maybe 10 years old, can get a moran. The moran, they used to build a singira, and a moran can come and visit. But if that kid gets pregnant, it is not allowed because that would be considered a kin who has given birth to that. So they will do all manner of oppressive means to get rid of that fetus. Stepping on the tummy, tobacco, and all kind of things that you don't despicable. And by having a campaign to say this is not acceptable, the people that we worked with, young women and girls, first of all, the society were not happy with what they were doing. So first of all, they are shunned by the society. But consistent and persistence helped to change that narrative. Today, if the people who want to practice that kind of culture, the harmful culture, they're the ones now are in the minority. It was common knowledge. But now, you will not walk in the Saburu and you try to do that, you'll be the one that people will find you doing the wrong thing. So all I'm saying is that it is possible to change the mindset and the culture that is built around people that speaking truth to power is wrong. Honestly, I feel proud and I support anyone who tells the difference between what is right and what is wrong, and then you speak up. Because if you keep quiet, it will come to bite you. So going back to your question in terms of then what happened to these guys, a lot of human rights defenders actually will tell you that they have faced all manner of oppression. Because we have a program to support human rights defenders, and I look at the caseload that we have. It is about physical injuries that people face. A lot of people who have offices, authorities would introduce what we call administrative action. For the first time, because you're speaking truth to power, all of a sudden the Kenya Revenue Authority is interested in you. All of a sudden they're asking you, are you doing returns? I mean, the same saga you saw in Nairobi Hospital the other day. I mean, all of a sudden, when you're not in favor, all of a sudden, I also seen the people who are committing these violations again, especially our constitution. Now they have identified a loophole within the law. So they will connive, particularly with the law authorities, and then they will come up with trumped up charges. And they realize that in court, you take so much time and they'll take away your energy, your resources.
And reputational damage as well.
And reputation damage that comes with it, because now you are defined as a criminal. Not for a crime you have committed. You just simply said someone stole the community land and they are now kicking you out as a community just because he's one shot and he requires it. So, and that's why we have created programs to support people who are victims, not because they violate any crime, but because they are targeted to be intimidated through the justice system, through physical injuries, and most of the time through psychosocial torture. Like the attack is on you as a person. And which is honestly more concerning to me now is the shift that is focusing, using what we call the cultural and religious beliefs, focusing mostly on women. So you be shamed body shaming. When you go online, that you find yourself photos that are very compromising, and you can't believe it yourself just because you're speaking truth to power.
Right.
So our programs focus on taking away the power of the oppressor to target you. So we train people online on how to deal with all these violations that happen. We work with government, particularly Parliament, to come up to assess the laws that are actually making it difficult and inhibiting the work of defending human rights. We work with doctors to help treat individuals that are victims, not because they just doing their normal life, but because they were actually speaking on behalf of the people and they have been injured. Even if it's in a demonstration, we support the kind of medical that is required. A lot of people now, as I've said, they're being fixed from the justice level.
Yeah.
You're criminalized. And that is why we are spending most of our resources on bail and litigation support. And we are proud to be working with the Law Society of Kenya to ensure that anyone who has been fixed wrongly just because of doing the right thing, to exercise your right, for example, to assemble, your right as a media person to share information.
Right.
You are a human rights defender, and most of the time I tell colleagues in the journalists that you never recognize how important your work is, and it's a right, the right to information. How would we know if your objectivity now is criminalized? Then how do we now trust what we are told? And that is why also we consider journalists as human rights defenders. And so our work recognizes that. But at the same time, sometimes you are faced with physical threats. So at that point, we have to work with agencies, government agencies, particularly the Witness Protection Unit. Sometimes when you go directly to agencies like the Directorate of Criminal Investigation or the police, they have programs to support, especially when you are in danger because, for example, of being a whistleblower. And so this we help to navigate attacks, accusations and threats as an individual who is speaking on behalf of the society. And we are proud to do that. And we don't feel shy to tell the world that if you're doing the right thing, you're speaking truth to power, that you're speaking on behalf of that child that has been molested in your society. Call the Defenders Coalition. We'll be there for you. You don't have to have that big name everybody talks about. It's good to have a big name.
Or money for lawyers.
No, you don't need to have lawyers fund. We shall be there to stand for you. And I want to thank Kenyans because our work is actually funded by Kenyans. The other day, we had a lot of individuals that were arrested just because they were peacefully protesting. And Kenyans recognized we have a pay bill, and they supported our work by giving and donating to our work. That is why we are able to have lawyers. We facilitate lawyers. Again, the Law Society was able actually to donate their own professional services. So with that kind of support, we are able to intervene. So, because a lot of people ask, a small organization, how are you able to support every human rights defender in the country? It's because most people rely on funding in terms of resources. People don't count on the human professional resource that you can tap in. We have journalists that are clear and keen about focusing on justice and what we call social impact stories. They are lawyers that will take human rights stories. They are actually doctors that will refuse to sit in the hospitals when there are violations. They go to the street. And these are the people where we tap into because they're also part of the human rights defense. As a country, we are in a better place.
It's a community essentially, and everyone is keeping everyone else afloat. We're holding each other up. You mentioned, for example, the interventions with the Law Society. The one that came to mind when it comes to weaponization of charges was these terrorism charges that were preferred on a lot of young people, a lot at the Kahawa law courts and elsewhere. Was Defenders by any chance part of the teams that were defending these young people? Were they expressing themselves peacefully? Yes.
Were they expressing through a constitutionally allowed means? The answer is yes. So yes, we defend everyone, even when the charges seem so crazy. We have recognized that the charge sheets do not speak about the reality on the ground. So we actually interview individuals. We speak with the families. We even speak with the law enforcement, who actually most of our allies, people don't know, the what they call the IOs, the people who are charged with investigating cases, and they say this one, this is not a criminal, but it's been brought to me, and it's a humanized issue. There's a humanized issue here. Maybe you need to be interested. So yes, we get involved from different sources, and among the cases that you mentioned is what we call lawfare, where the law is being used to abuse the justice process. Yes, the law. In our books, we may have the law that talks about terrorism act, but when you use it against peaceful protesters, you are abusing the law. And I think, therefore, the person who is abused in the justice system deserves a lawyer. And as a human rights, the Defenders Coalition, we stand with you. So and that's how we call upon not just ourselves, but many other partners. They came on board to help support some of these cases. And if there are other cases, similar cases out there where someone has been attacked, deliberately criminalized, we are more than happy to support through litigation. It's about the law, and it's about justice. It's about defending the people who deserve it.
Kamau, what kind of partnerships do you employ? Because I'm thinking the Defenders Coalition is doing this, the Kenya Human Rights Commission is doing this, the ICJ Kenya is doing this, Katiba Institute is doing this. You know, it's all of you are, standing in the gap for human rights and championing human rights. So do you work together? Do you refer cases to one another? How come some are more visible than others?
The Defenders Coalition is the least visible organization among the many organizations that you mentioned.
Yes, why?
Because we work as a defense and support mechanism for human rights defenders and organizations. So you mentioned the ICJ, the Katiba Institute, the Kenya Human Rights Commission. These are members of the Defenders Coalition. So when they are working at the front line, when they fight, for example, some of the laws that are being amended or created, they are taking away on their freedoms, then they go to court. When Katiba Institute identifies some of the constitutional, the way in which people are trying to avoid what the Constitution has decided, and they look here, this is what the Constitution is saying. We are working with them. So because most of the time they will not just go to court, but they have clients. The Kenya Human Rights Commission as an institution will not be successful without the millions of support from ordinary citizens. So when there is an action, we partner, but we shall come in on board, for example, when there is violation against these people at the front line. So you will not see us because we have Katiba, we have the people of Kenya, we have the Kenya Human Rights Commission, Amnesty and all that. They are the front, but we support them. That is why you will not find me mostly in the media, and it's very rare. Today, you have touched on a very unique topic on who defends the defender. And most of the time, people are so agitated by the violations take place on a daily basis that people don't remember that speaking up, for example, in cases of police killings, we see mostly the victims of police brutality. We see people who talk about their children who have been kidnapped or arbitrarily taken. Rarely do people talk about how did you then get justice. So we are the back helping people to get justice. And we don't want to publicize so much because we believe that our publicity is within the people that we support.
So the community will know what you do.
Oh, they know.
There are cases which are national, in terms of profile. And those ones you can say it's easier for you to get any of these organizations coming in to help, all of them, even the media highlighting a case and then also helping you to get noticed. But there are very many defenders at community level who are doing things on a daily basis. Like you said, you have noticed violation against children and you're speaking out in your community. And the community structure, this is not even the government, community structure itself is trying to suppress that. Are you able to have networks that pick out such people, such champions of rights at the grassroots level?
Actually, that's a great question because a lot of people that I meet, they say, oh, you work for the Defenders Coalition, so your members are, countable number of frontline human rights defenders.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, they are our members. They do great work. But I can tell you, if I go to the database of the people that we work with, people who are doing great work, not recognized, but it is appreciated within the community. There are people, honestly, if I mention their names, you'll be asking, and who is that? From where? Because especially after the devolution, since 2010 Constitution, and we have the devolved system of government, I think we also devolved corruption and bad practices.
Yeah.
And a lot of people actually have taken upon themselves to, because the power that we been given by the Constitution on public participation, so they look at, for example, the budget estimates, they also look at the expenditure. And they look at the roads, for example, that you have promised to build, and then the schools that you have promised to build, and the bursaries that our governors have promised to give. And then they are able to form what we call community circles. They review, and they're able to say, this road, they say here it is been fixed for this amount, but where is the road? So I've seen a lot of journalists, particularly community human rights defenders, and especially women, because women are very keen on, especially on matters of bursaries, the matters of how their children, for example, are abused sexually. So actually that's why we have much more violation taking place at the community. So how do we get to know about them? Do they exist? Yes, a lot of human rights defenders. So the challenge is that because of the expectations in the society, if you're a mother with your 3 children, and you are dealing with your adversary who is the governor, or maybe the CEC or CEC or whatever they call them, they are the ones responsible for the corruption. So you find that they will fight, but they will not go to public because they have a whole society don't expect our women human rights defenders to speak up. She's thinking about her children, what happens to them in school, because they'll be identified as children of that rabble-rouser. And honestly, and that's what I feel so hard about the women human rights defenders, because they are criminalized by the justice system, they are criminalized by the society, they are criminalized
by the state, by
even their own families. So yet they're the most resilient persons. And actually the whole of this week, we have been celebrating women human rights defenders from every corner of this country. And they talk about, they refuse to talk about the stories of violations, which is interesting. If I was to compare men human rights defenders and women human rights defenders will not talk about tribulations. They only talk about the stories of success and how they helped impact others. They never talk about themselves. So, and I think it's the time that we have to also change that narrative to allow the society have an idea and acceptance that women are actually the backbone of the defense of every right that we believe that we enjoy in this country. I see it from the family, I see it from the community, I see it even among the articulation among the people that we have. In fact, because later we shall be celebrating the success, the great work of some of the human rights defenders. Today we have the Human Rights Defenders Awards. We are celebrating the uniqueness of the different ways and means that people have used to succeed to be impactful in society. And you find that some of the stories I'm reading about the women human rights defenders, when you read about them, you'll come and just have them here to tell their stories, because there is a way they have fixed this nation without having a headline anywhere. And I think today, I feel joy that we have people in the media fraternity that honestly have been speaking powerfully, are not intimidated. And when they're intimidated, they still drive and say, we'll still speak because that's the truth. I have women human rights defenders that we shall also be honoring again, who have not just in Nairobi, but in local communities that from Lamu, Garissa, and other corners of this country, the work that they do. But also we have seasoned human rights defenders, people who you don't have even to say their names. The moment you say someone who, when the court announces, for example, the police, when they go on a protest, they need to wear a uniform and they need to have their badges on. Someone who have charged people who are wearing balaclavas and all that. This kind of people. Or people who have consistently, because of the violations that they witness in their own communities, they refuse to be intimidated by their local chiefs. They refuse to be intimidated by the police. And some of them, with the time, they are actually being recognized by their churches. And we are saying, look here, it's time we recognize them as a country.
As a country.
Yeah.
We'll wrap with, again, just who you're celebrating, but from, what did I call it, a top-down perspective. But just before that, I wanted to hang on the women human rights defenders. How do we create safe spaces? I mean, how do we make sure that any space where essentially there's a push for justice, a push for human rights is safe for women? And I'll go back to Maandamano 2024, 2025, which both started as these places that were safe for everybody. And the number of women that came out was immense. And then you go back to other previous protests that we had that weren't quite like that. And then even 2024 and 2025 Maandamanos became unsafe for everybody after a while, but more so for women. How do we make sure that these spaces remain safe for women? Because you've said like they're the backbone of, the human rights defenders.
We did a study last year. It's called the gendered nature of protests. And we were shocked. We thought, because of the nature of violent policing of protests that we have in our country, that most women would shy away from participating. And we recognize that majority, you may not see them carrying the placard at the front, but the majority of the participants are actually women. And I think women carry a lot of weight in the society more than we describe or ascribe to them. So when you're raising a concern, for example, about the killing of women, what we call femicide, they'll be the first people to go because they feel it, they experience it. So what has happened is that they call upon the government to honestly do only one thing: recognize that we have fundamental rights and freedoms, obey the Constitution. The policing, they are not saying there is no public order management, they're saying there's something what you call human rights-based public order management. They're only asking for a change of governance. They want a situation whereby the right of their children to thrive is actually recognized. Stop corruption. Basically, stop stealing. I don't like you using the word corruption. Stop stealing our wealth. If you're a leader, don't just show off what you have stolen from us. Like this chapter 6 of our Constitution, it gives very good grounds for what kind of leaders that we want. And above all, the Constitution says we the people when we decide this is the kind of leader that we want, can you please leave that expectation? And I repeat, the donation of power of the people to you does not say you lord over them. Don't colonize our people. They've already been colonized once. Now we want to thrive. Now we have the power and we call out. And let me tell you, the intimidation that used to happen, you have the gun, you have the tear gas, doesn't make sense anymore because we have a very powerful tool called the Constitution. And I tell Kenyans, the flag, the Constitution, and the water, please go with it. It's very important.
Thank you.
Staki Mapepe says, the government has made almost everyone an activist, from Mama Mboga, Gen Z, doctor, teachers, na kadhalika.
Ni ukweli.
Everybody is a rights defender. Thank you very much, Kamau. Kamau Ngugi, Executive Director of the Defenders Coalition, has been our guest for this hour. In the next hour, we talk about
tunaongea juu ya the copyrights and related rights bill. There's the word rights a lot, but tunaongea about that in just the next few minutes. # is Fixing the Nation and TV.